Carlton King, the former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy Podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, but actually really majors in on the world of geopolitics. That's really the world that controls what you, me, see, hear, and often believe in. Because the state is able to direct us in certain ways as to how and what we should feel when we should feel it, and what we think is right or what we think is wrong. So today I'm doing one of my specials. I'm without my podcast wife. And what I wanted, it's not going to be one of what I generally call, which I do generally by myself, which are the versions of the show which I call critical thinking. It's actually going to be a show which is in answer to quite a few requests that I've had from individuals. And that request really, in the general, is I can singlify it, if you will, is generally about how can I join the security services. That's how it's put. It's put as the security services. And when I sort of drill down and, write back to individuals and say, what do you mean? Oftentimes what they mean is they want to take part in some way, shape or means in countering terrorism. Now, the reason why they say countering terrorism is because right now the big thing that we all see, and that has been for several years, is countering terrorist events. I mean, when I was coming into this world, the big thing was actually not countering terrorism, but countering espionage, countering subversion, countering sabotage. That was my view when I got in, and terrorism was there, but as it wasn't an adjunct, but it was a part that wasn't necessarily as big as the other some, albeit that the IRA was the body that was causing way more terrorism, if you want to put it that way, than we've suffered over the last 20 years. So that was how I basically looked at it. So in answer to that then, what I thought I'd do is I thought I'd do a show on how this actually functions. So what are the bodies in the United Kingdom? So for listeners outside the United Kingdom, it might be of interest for you to understand how the United Kingdom's, for want of a better word, security forces, intelligence services function. So that's what I'm going to hone in on. In some countries, it's easier than others. So, frankly, if you're in... And to be fair, it's becoming relatively easier in the United Kingdom as well to find your way into these services. So if you're in the United States, I'll take that as the first example. It's quite easy to say, I want to counter terrorism at the level of the state of the United States. then basically the first thing you're probably going to think about is either joining the CIA or joining the FBI. So if you want to do it from the law enforcement stand, you say, I'll join the FBI. If you want to do it from a espionage stand, you say, I'm going to join the CIA. And then for some people, they think, oh, well, what about the NSA, National Security Agency? And they say, oh, I want to do it for eavesdropping, so I'll do that. Right, okay. So, and they're all very open about how you join and have been basically forever and a day. That's not been the case in the United Kingdom. So there is still a hangover from the United Kingdom. Plus, there has not really been an explanation, other than, of course, if you buy my books. If you want to, and I'll say this now, just not plugging the book as such, but if you buy my book, Black Ops, The Incredible True Story of a British Secret Agent. Now, I could have actually called it Black Ops, The Incredible True Story of a Black British Secret Agent. Now, there's a misnomer in there that I use the word secret agent. Now, the reality is that there isn't such a thing as a secret agent who's doing the work. In the United Kingdom, we don't call our officers agents, we call them officers. But the problem is that the public watches American television and American programs, and most American agencies call their people agents. So an FBI agent, an ATF agent. So what happens is and notice I didn't say CIA, because CIA doesn't call its people agents, they are officers. I know all the time you see it on TV and you hear them say a CIA agent. No, he's not an agent, he's an officer. The agent, and the reason why that is because the CIA modelled itself on the British system on MI6, where I worked as well. So the reality is that an agent in our game basically is the informant. So it's a person we've got generally turned from their own state to work for us, or from their own organisation to work for us, and we get their information. They are an agent of the intelligence that we get. Hence, they're called an agent. In criminal terms, they call them informant. The FBI calls them a confidential informant. But in our terms, in Great Britain, they're called agents. Now, in the police field, just general straightforward police, then, of course, they are, again, basically an informant, but the new name now is a covert human intelligence source. That's what an individual who provides information in the criminal world. But in the security world, the intelligence world, that person who provides that information is still an agent. So the person getting the information, the person doing the work in the organisation as the body, is the officer. So that's the first thing I needed to explain, because I think that's important. Because if you're applying, you should understand at least the basics like that. Now, secondly, application. It doesn't really matter whether you're a man, a woman, a person of colour. Now, if you read my book, what you'll see is, and the reason why I wrote the book, is in my era, back in the 90s example, in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, up to 2000s, I'd say about then, my primary body, the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, or Scotland Yard Special Branch, which is was the primary police secret intelligence body in the United Kingdom, which I'll go a little bit into the history in a while of Special Branch, because then you'll see how all the other intelligence agencies worked out of Special Branch, way back in back. But the Special Branch, the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, Scotland Yard Special Branch, it probably had in it more people of colour than in any other, well, not probably it did, than in any other body that was looking at secret intelligence. Now, I should define secret intelligence. So secret intelligence is generally state-oriented intelligence that the government, the state, wants, and that these state bodies utilise to either find something out or to prevent something on behalf of the state. So we're not just now talking about police matters that are criminal matters, that are police matters which work to, a murder's been done. Yes, a murder affects the whole state, but it's not affecting the state in a secretive manner. It's affecting the state in a manner that relates to the well-being of citizens within the state. When you're looking at secret intelligence and national security, the aim of the individuals carrying the act out should be in some way, shape or means to undermine, frustrate, prevent, debilitate the state in some way, shape or means. So it's not just that it's a criminal act, but it's an act that's aimed at causing the state a problem. Now, unfortunately, some of our senior individuals in the United Kingdom don't understand this. And so they try to treat the police special branch as though they're dealing with normal criminal activity, when this isn't the case. What the special branch is doing is actually looking at the whole of society and defending society. So when it does things which you wouldn't do in a normal criminal procedure, it's doing it because it's not dealing with normal criminals. It's dealing with people, regardless of how limited you think their actions are in the first instance, looking at it at the first view. Let's take, for example, individuals that are trying to, work against climate change. You can work against climate change and have demonstrations, etc., etc. But at some stage, it's government policy which the individuals are trying to overturn. If they're doing that by voting or by normal demonstrative matters, that's not a problem. But if they're doing that in order to then carry out further acts which may vie into extremism or even terrorism, then that's an action against the state. And so the state protects itself, and the special branch looking at that is working on behalf of protecting the state to prevent that. And it may be something as simple as, example, let's stop certain banks working in the United Kingdom, let's send them back home. So this is what happened with life sciences, because I don't know if you're aware, again, life sciences is where people are using animals to look for generally diseases that will affect humans. And they use the animal as a guinea pig in order to do that. Now, sometimes they use it for much less things, and you hear of them using animals to look at whether a lipstick will cause inflammation to humans. Now, what happens is some people are absolutely and totally, utterly against that because they don't believe in speciesism. They believe that a dog is just has exactly the same rights as a human being. So why would you test lipsticks on a dog and cause the dog a problem when you wouldn't test lipsticks on a human and cause a human problem? Or even some will go as far as to say the dog isn't wearing a lipstick, the human is. So if you want to test on a human and whether it gives the human a reaction that will kill it, test that on a human, don't test it on a dog. Right, so these are the views you have. Now, that's okay, you can have those views, and this is why it's very delicate in this game. You can have those views all day long, right? But would it be wrong for the state, in terms of the special man, to look at an individual with those views because those views may go further? They may turn around and say, 2 years down the line, well, it's not working what we've been doing by just standing with a placard and a demo. Let's go that step further. Let's now start freeing the animals that have been given some type of disease or whatever it might be, and let's put them back into the wild, which then would undermine the whole of the nation. Or let's example the people who are funding these operations, and this is what's happened in the past. Let's look at them and let's frighten those individuals. Let's go a step further. Let's even attack those individuals, or even a step further. Let's even blow those individuals up because they are supporting them. And if they're foreign banks, let's make sure we can force them out of our country. And that way the country loses billions of pounds. So you see how something that appeared to be straightforward and simple isn't. So what's this to do with recruitment? Well, I answer that because when you go into this area of operation, be it from the police perspective or later on I'm going to talk to you about other perspectives, you've got to understand where it might lead and what you are doing or how you might be doing it. Now, in Britain, the two primary bodies that work at home are the police special branch, which is no longer the case, so that's now been defunct. And in Britain, we now tend to call that body counter-terrorism commands, which is an absolute and total and stupid misnomer, because you're not only dealing with terrorism, and that puts you further in the vein of people turning around and saying, well, why are they looking at these animal rights people? They aren't causing terror when they're just causing extremism, right? But I would suggest is, when does extremism become terrorism? How do you know, as an individual looking at somebody, how do you know when, example, let's take it in a modern context, Friends of the Earth won't start saying, you know what we've been trying to do to stop petrol being used, to stop fuel being used, to stop oil being used. It's not good enough. It's gone nowhere. So the next move has got to be, let's start intimidating petrol, oil, fuel barons, gas barons. Let's start doing that. And then it's, you know what? We could do it better by actually blowing up their houses, right? Now, if you've not been looking at these individuals, the day the house is blown up, you've got to start from ground zero. You don't know what's been happening. You don't have a clue who the people are. You don't have a clue what their thoughts are. You don't have a clue who's gone towards extremism, then into terror. Or you don't have a clue of those who would never go towards extremism into terror. So you have to keep looking at them all the time. But of course, politicians, duplicitous as they are, they won't say to the public, oh, we asked the police to look into this in the old days special branch, now the counter-terrorism command. Oh no, if they're found out, they'll turn around and say, oh, that was heavy-handed looking at these individuals. Oh, these individuals were never going to do anything. Well, how do you know they were never going to do anything? You know, the greatest problem that hit the United Kingdom, and that, for those people who don't know, that's basically the overall enveloping title for the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So Great Britain being England, Wales and Scotland, and Northern Ireland being part of the island of Ireland, which is still British. Right. So Northern Ireland, which, as I just said, is a part of the United Kingdom, it started off as a civil rights movement. Okay, the IRA, the real IRA that returned, because it had been the IRA previously, and I'll explain that as I talk about the history of the special branch, had been previously, but had been defeated in the 50s, really, and it was just a campaigning body for civil rights of Catholics. What's wrong with that? Nothing whatsoever, because Catholics were being badly treated. You know, there is no denying of that. On the northern part of that island, the one that the Protestant Great Britain generally ran, yeah, the Catholic body, as a general rule, was being treated badly. So there was a civil rights movement copying the civil rights movement of the blacks in the United States, because black Americans being treated badly. But of course, some of those people became radical first, extremists second, and third, into terror. And then there was 20, 30 years of terror. Now, if you don't have a handle on it to start off with, you'll never see that coming. You'll never see it happening. So, of course, people turn around and say, oh, well, why are you looking at individuals? It'll never happen in Britain. Politicians always think the minimum. They forget that Northern Ireland was a part of Britain. Because otherwise I say, why were you fighting a war to keep Northern Ireland a part of Britain if you're going to forget it all the time? Yes, this is part of the United Kingdom, which was basically in civil war for 30 years. Yeah, and that's because the eye was taken off seeing what organisations were doing. Okay? So this is the import of these organisations. So I just mentioned that. So now to come back to say, how do you apply? In the old days, the easiest method was, if you wanted to take some part in it, from the first instance, was to try and join the special branch of the police force in your area. So I need to explain it. So let's go back to 1883 when Scotland Yard, the Metropolitan Police's special branch, was formed. It was the only special branch, and it carried out the secret intelligence, if you wish, the secret police organisation for the whole of the United Kingdom. That's any part of the United Kingdom, and indeed some parts of the United Kingdom colonies. That's what it did. It was the only body doing that. Then what happened was that the ex-boss, who was known as M, he's the chief superintendent, had to leave the Metropolitan Police after 30 years because that's what the law was. He didn't want to leave this behind, so he lobbied to get what he called a Secret Service Bureau. Now, he knew he couldn't be in the police, so therefore they wouldn't have any police powers, which means no powers of arrest, no powers to carry firearms, no powers to question individuals, no powers to detain individuals. Okay? So he wanted this Secret Service Bureau, and he lobbied, and the military had some interest in it, and so did the Home Office. And so they allowed him a Secret Service Bureau. So in 1909, a Secret Service Bureau was formed. So do the mathematics and you can see that's 30 odd years after Special Branch was formed, which initially was called the Special Irish Branch, because what I should have said is it was formed to defeat the then IRA, which they call the Fenians, or the Irish Republican Brotherhood. It was formed, who were blowing up buildings in London to take the struggle for what they called Home Rule in Ireland to the British mainland, to London. And frankly, after several years, the Special Branch were able to defeat the then IRA on the mainland at least, i.e. on Great British mainland, not necessarily in Ireland, in the whole of Ireland, which was all of Ireland then was British. So basically they dropped the sobriquet Irish and just called it the Special Branch, because it had been called the Special Irish Branch. And that's how the Special Branch was created, and that was in the Metropolitan Police. So that stayed the way it was. As I said, in 1919 they then created this MO5 in the old days originally, and then it changed its name and a few movements about later to MI5, but really nothing to do with the military, to be fair. And then came off that MI6, which did external. So internal work was MI5, and external work was MI6. But of course, MI5 could never work by itself. It always had to depend on Special Branch to provide it with information, or to arrest people, or to detain people, or to question people, etc., etc., etc. So that's why you had this two-bodied thing, whereas you look in any other country, really, in the world, I'm thinking of an exception of Germany, basically the Internal Security Service is basically a police service like the Special Branch, because it has the powers that are required to do that role. Only in Britain, and I said now, in Germany, because after the Second World War, the British had taken the north of Germany, and it created, Great Britain that is, created then a German security body based on the security service, of course, because MI5, because they had that. And by the way, the security service is the actual name of MI5, the security service, that's what it's called. So it created this body, which it called the Bundesverfassungsschutz, which really means the Federal Constitutional Protection. Okay, in German, in English, that's what it means. And that body was basically like security service, no police powers, etc., etc., etc. Because in the past, the German body that carried out this protective work in country, what we call national security work, like what Special Branch was doing, right, was of course the Gestapo. And because the Gestapo had a bad name, which meant the Geheime Staatspolizei, which means the state secret police. So its name says exactly what it was. The Geheime Staatspolizei. The Geheim Secret State Police. So in English, we turn it around and we say the state secret police. Right. So that's what that body was. So getting rid of that body, because of what happened in the Nazi times, they split it into two. The Bundesverfassungsschutz and then another new body called the Bundeskriminalamt. Okay, so that is the Federal Criminal Office. So that's basically like the FBI. So basically that body and the Bundesverfassungsschutz did the work. But everywhere else that I can think about and whom I have worked with, and I've worked in most countries in the world, from the FBI to the Guardia Civil or Policia Nacional to the French DST, they're all police bodies. All of them, because they need those, to the Scandis, to the, in the old days, it's changed a little bit now in Canada, but it used to be the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Then it changed to CSIS, which is Canadian Security Intelligence Organisation. So, which is a little bit different because it doesn't have those police powers, but again, a little bit different. Because it's now changed, it copied the British system in a strange way. I don't know why, but anyway, it has in some sense. So, so what you have is you have police bodies doing the national security work. Now, the external work that people do, going into other countries, being spies in other countries, or working intelligence-wise in other countries to get individuals who might want to do your country harm from outside of the country, which in our land is called the Secret Intelligence Service, which was formed in 1911, which came out of M, because the fellow was, the chief superintendent was called Melville, and he was known as M. He took over, as I said, when he did his 30 years, created this SO5, and then in 1911, it's changed to MI5 and then MI6. He created these two bodies. Those bodies, and I know they give the title to, and I'm just thinking as I'm saying it, to Rowan and May. What was the other guy? Two other individuals were given the title of having created these. But actually, the man who created the security service wasn't the other individuals. It was M, Melville. They created an external body as well. So they split the one body that used to look at both and then split it to two. So you've got three bodies that you've got there looking at. Two internally, the police special branch, which was there's only one at that time, came out of Scotland Yard and did everything throughout the country. Then you had this fledgling new body in 1909 called the Security Service that comes about. And then you had in 1911 the Secret Intelligence Service doing it external to the United Kingdom. So these bodies were all doing the work. It was then realised there needs to be another body, and that other body dealt then with signals intelligence, which was again military based initially because that was the bodies that had most of that going for it, particularly in the Royal Navy because of shipping, etc., etc. But then they formed a body called GCHQ, Government Communications Headquarters. So now what we look at the three agencies in Britain: GCHQ, Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, better known as MI6, and the Security Service, better known as MI5. So these are the three agencies that they call them. And then, because they like to split it and somehow see it as different, the police special branch, they kind of see differently somehow. Shouldn't be, because actually the primary work being done on secret work in the United Kingdom is actually done by the police special branches. Now they call them Counter-Terrorism Command or some other name they give them. Because, of course, you can't function without them. You can't arrest a spy if you've got no powers of arrest. Only the special branch now, Counter-Terrorism Command, can do that. So you see, this is how you've got these two bodies, which I think is ineffective. I think it's problematic, but that's what's happened. So there we go. So if you're now making an application, so I've given you the history, you're now making an application now to want to join these bodies, you've got to look at which body first you want to join. And what I did say to you is, I started by saying about people of colour, gender, I didn't mention class, but I will now. So basically the body that had by far the most people in it that were of colour was, in my day, the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, so Scotland Yard Special Branch. It would probably have 10% of its population, 10, maybe 15% of its officers were of colour, men or women. Then you had women, again, maybe around that figure of 10 to 15%. So again, you could be of colour and a woman, or so they're mixed. And then, of course, the rest were people who were white British. So, as I say, this body of individuals who performed this role in the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, you could simply do. You join the police service, and because in 1964 the United Kingdom moved from 112 police forces down to 43 in England and Wales, 8 in Scotland and 1 in Northern Ireland, what then happened is they provided each of these forces with their own special branch. However, out with the Metropolitan Police, or Scotland Yard Special Branch, none of them were a career in themselves. Some of them were very small, with 4 or 5 people in their special branch. Some of them were larger, but none of them could you do a career, with the exception of the Metropolitan Police Special Branch. In the others, generally you were probably a CID individual who was then posted, so as a posting to Special Branch, or said, I fancy a posting in Special Branch, and you get that. In the Metropolitan Police, there was a whole raft of examinations that you had to stand, and a selection process that you had to go through, and a vetting process that you had to go through. So I'll just give you my example. When I joined, about 1,000 people sat the exam in the Met to try and get into the Special Branch, and in the end, throughout the whole of the process, which they then had, even before the exam, to the selection process, to the vetting process, they ended up taking 10 of us. So 10 of us joined. So you can see it's like a 1% actually got in. But once you were in the branch, that was you for your career. You could stay in the branch the whole of your career. Now, what was the negative to that? For me, I say none. But for some people, if you wanted to make rank quickly in the police service, you would not have stayed in Special Branch, because it was highly selective, and some would argue that because of that, it had some of the highest calibre individuals. So, for example, at one stage, I think more than half of the individuals in the Metropolitan Police who had degrees were in Special Branch. Now, when you take into account that the Metropolitan Police was 30,000 people, I'm talking now police officers, 60,000, 50, 60,000 people altogether, but police officers, 30,000 individuals, and the branch, police officers in the branch now, not civilian people in the branch, police officers in the branch were about 500 people. You can see that the Met Special Branch by far had the highest number of graduates within its service, because they were looking for people with good education, people with foreign languages, people who had a good understanding of politics, so there were political exams which you had to sit, a good understanding of the English language, etc., 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 etc. So it tended to gravitate towards individuals who had a higher education. It also tended to gravitate towards individuals who had been to what in Britain we call public schools. Those are schools that are not public schools. They're private schools. So these private schools, and obviously you've got the most well-known, Eton, etc. And we had some people in Special Branch who'd been to Eton, definitely had been to Rugby, had been to City of Westminster, been to, many of the higher calibre, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, public schools individuals had been to. Oftentimes because one guy we had, the father was a primary politician, Home Secretary. Another, it was Home Secretary's son we had in the branch. Another individual, the people were generals. Some of them were connected with the royals somewhere down the line. Some of them were, quite a few, were ex-ambassadors' sons or daughters, etc., etc., etc. Some were colonial officers' daughters and sons. So you had this type of individual in the branch with language capacity, with knowledge of foreign states, with understanding of foreign politics, etc., which gravitated to this body called the Metropolitan Police Special Branch. That happened in no other special branch in the other police forces, because the other police forces are very small. You need to understand that the Met is by far the biggest police force in the United Kingdom. The others, we now call them services, by the way, the others, some of the police services were 1,000 people, 1,500 people, to 3,000. That's the average sort of police size. 1,500 to 3,000 police officers is the average kind of police size in Great Britain. So you can see the Met dwarf that, and indeed Special Branch with 500 police officers. If you add civilians, that's probably 800. Is as big as some of the police forces. So that's why the branch. Now, what that meant was that when you were sitting the examinations, which were exactly the same examinations of the rest of the police service, if you wanted to stay in Special Branch after you passed the examination, you were competing against your other high calibre individuals within Special Branch to try and get yourself up the ladder. And so progression was very slow. So if you really were looking for rank, you'd probably come out of Special Branch, because you could only join in the old days as a DC, so the lowest rank as a detective constable, and you did the CID courses, etc., etc., etc. So that was one way of joining. So that was in your own hands. You could join. Yes, it was tough to get in, 1% chance, but you could join the police, the Metropolitan Police, to be in the, if you will, the lifelong special branch. To be in other special branches, you could join the police and potentially, with a bit of luck, get into, they didn't have exams like that to get in, so probably had to be in the CID or whatever, so to get into the other special branch. So that was the one way, and they only worked within the police area, I should say. So if you were in Cambridge's police special branch, you only worked within Cambridgeshire. If you're in the Metropolitan Police special branch, you could work throughout the whole country. Because, our primary body that we looked at, nationally, indeed to some extent internationally, was the Irish Republican extremism. So the IRA was our bread and butter, and other issues that we looked at. So that's the one body that you could get into. And even today now, you can enter the Counter-Terrorism Command. You can't stay in for life in the Counter-Terrorism Command anymore. It's less specialist. It's not as specialised as what Special Branch was. I don't think they have examinations to even get in now. So it's much less specialised than what Special Branch was, and that is really a deficit for the United Kingdom. It really is. It's undermined our capability. But anyway, so if you wanted to fight terrorism or you wanted to fight espionage or whatever, you could do it the police route. And of course, you would always get to fight and deal with issues that affected the United Kingdom if you're doing that. So the next one, let's look at the Security Service MI5. Now, in the old days, the way that people were recruited to MI5, the Security Service, real name, was that as a general rule, you were an individual who was at a university. Oftentimes they liked Oxford, Cambridge, St Andrews, maybe Imperial College. And what would happen is they had dons there, which are the masters of the universities, the professors who teach people. And some of them were given the task by the security service to look out for individuals who may well be good in the security service. And what might happen is he or she might be doing her work in the university of this level. So these are the Russell Group universities. St Andrews, yes, would have been another one. These are the Russell Group universities. So this is where we come into class. Because you see, frankly, in Great Britain, the vast majority of people going to Russell Group universities were of a certain class. Okay? They were not generally working class individuals. You may well get working class in Special Branch like me, but you were generally not going to get working class in the security service. Definitely not in the role as desk officers. So you'd be a desk officer in Special Branch of any class, but not in the security service. So what would happen is that you get tagged on the shoulder and say, would you like to do something for your country or work for your country or whatever? You may say yes, and then before you know it, you're being touted to the security service. And basically the same thing happened with the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6, which I subsequently which I was seconded to later on in my era. And again, it was totally class orientated. Now, with that being class orientation, it tended to also have a lack of diversity in terms of race. Because, of course, the ruling elite in Great Britain tended to be white. Their sons and daughters tended to be white. And they were going to the universities. So there was tended to be a lack of race. And I can remember in my initial times, because we worked very, very closely with the security service, for obvious reasons. I've told you they can't arrest anybody, do anything, etc., etc., etc. And so in many cases, we duplicated. So we had a section, say, that was looking at Libya, and the security service had a section looking at Libya. So there's a duplication, and we'd work with, I'd work with my opposite number and he'd work with, or she'd work with me. So the reality was, and by the time I'm talking about 80s, there were she's there. At one stage, women were generally working as secretaries in these organisations, but then they became officers in what we call the 3 agencies. So that application process was by that. It was by you being tagged on the shoulder, be it in the security service or the Secret Intelligence Service, which again, when I was in the Secret Intelligence Service, I saw nobody of my grade who was of colour. That has now changed, of course, absolutely changed, because one realises it has to change. But that was the circumstance because of the class orientation. Now, both of those services put out on the internet applications. And as I said to you before, there was no application like that. Now, for the lower positions, because in the old days you had for want of a better word, the officer class, the desk officers, in security service, case officers in Secret Intelligence Service. So in MI5, desk officers, in security service, desk officers, in MI6, Secret Intelligence Service, case officers. Those were generally the ones tagged on the shoulders. Yeah, you might want to do this. And they're of a certain ilk, certain type of person, fit the bill right. Because, of course, people had said to the Dons, will they fit in? So the negative with that was that in the old Sov days, Soviet Union days, and the Warsaw Pact days, they knew exactly who they needed to target. So they knew we could go to Oxford and Cambridge and target individuals who'd be likely to be picked up by the service, and we could turn those individuals ahead of time. The Soviet services were thinking, for that read in those days, the KGB was thinking we could turn those ahead of time and we'd have them from day one, which is what happened with the famous 5 from both the security service and from the Secret Intelligence Service. They were picked up at university because they knew that's the ilk of individuals who would be brought into the services. So that's how they were doing it. It was dead easy. Now, below them, there were always individuals, university individuals again, who were brought in as, they used to call them EBs, executive branch individuals in SIS, and round about the same in security service. And these individuals could be from any university, highly educated, etc., who could do other things. And then you had specialists. So those are specialist linguists, specialist computer individuals, specialists on whatever. And those would be brought into the service in a different way. Oftentimes, that could be people brought in from the military, example, who'd had a military career and thought, yeah, these people will be okay. They weren't military people, they were civilians because they'd left, because these bodies are civilian bodies. Do not think they are military bodies, they're not, they're civilian bodies. So that's how you would join. Now it's much simpler. Now they put an application on the internet and they say, security service, would you like to join? And they say what the different roles are, and they say what you might need to get into those particular roles and what you do. Now, what I'm going to say to you is, if you think you've watched Spooks and that security service people are going to run around, MI5 people are going to run around with guns and protect ambassadors, no, that is not the job of them. They do not do that. That, if anything, well, not if anything, that was the job of Special Branch. They were doing the protection, they were running around with guns, they were surveilling with guns, etc., etc., etc. All that stuff, outward bound stuff, was being done by the Special Branch. in the old days. And now, to some extent, it's being done by the Counter-Terrorism Command. It's not done by the security service. You're generally, in the security service, you're generally going to be carrying out more, how should I put it, analytical work. Yeah. SO15 in the Metropolitan Police Service, Scotland Yard, does analytical work as well, but the security service spends its time doing analytical work, assessment work, etc., etc. You will have bodies within the security service who are not the primary officers, who are not the desk officers, who are doing things like surveillance, but again, unarmed. These individuals are generally picked up from the army, from the police, from wherever, to do the surveillance work in the security service. Yep. They're generally not the regular security service officers. And to some extent, I've got to say it, and I will, they're looked down on by the more senior desk officers in the security service. So that's a problem if you perceive it that way, but you can work that way. So what I'm saying is understand what role you're going for. Now, if you want to perform your role externally, then what you need to look for is a secret intelligence service. Because then you're talking about potentially being a spy, committing espionage on behalf of the United Kingdom. You are looking at all the things that government wants assessed for itself so government can function. It wants secretive information, secret intelligence that it can get, and that's what you'll be doing. But that will be external of the country. And it may be looking at terrorism, it may be espionage, it may be countering proliferation, i.e. the creation of nuclear weapons, etc., etc., etc. Now, again, we used to do all of that in the branch, but from the home perspective, sitting in the home, sitting in the United Kingdom. And now the one I haven't touched on so precisely is GCHQ. I'm not as au fait with GCHQ. I have worked with GCHQ people, obviously, and I know people who are in the GCHQ, but I'm not as au fait. But what I know is it's a technical perspective. So what they're looking for are technical individuals who know about communication systems, who know about computers, who know about eavesdropping, who know languages, because languages need translating, etc., etc., etc. So it's a much more technical body. So your imperial colleges, the colleges that deal with technology would be the bodies that they would pick up from, and where you would apply. And again, they've gone down the same route, and they have now got applications that are open on the internet. So you can openly apply on the internet to be part of the government communications headquarters. So I'm hoping that this has given you a full overview of how you can join the services. I should say a little bit about the military, because there's often a misunderstanding. None of the services I've mentioned so far are military in any way, shape or means. The military has its own services, generally though, which is MI, military intelligence. Then you've got in the Navy, naval intelligence aspect, it's got its own work. And then you've got, what do they call the provost sort of thing in the Air Force, which again carries out its sort of more sensitive work. But it's only relating to their branches of the military. And it's relating to their branches as to how they perceive it in warfare. But it can stray into other areas that are the areas of special branch, or used to be special branch, now Counter-Terrorism Command, or the areas of the security service. But again, it should be passing that to those two services. So the best way you would have seen that is in Northern Ireland, where because the military was committed, the Army, in particular Air Force as well, was committed, it then had its own officers, say military intelligence, ICOR, or in the 14th Intelligence Unit, as it was in those old days, it's now changed its name, going out and performing tasks either to obtain agents, as I said to you before, sources of secret intelligence in the IRA or wherever, the same way as the RUC, as it was then in those old days, Royal Constabulary, now the Police Service of Northern Ireland, Special Branch was doing in the old days, getting and gathering intelligence, and of course the Security Service was getting and grabbing intelligence from those ways. And we were getting the feed from those people because, of course, in the United Kingdom, in Great Britain, to be precise, MPSB, Metropolitan Police Special Branch, was the primary body dealing with the IRA until later on, to about 1996, when the Security Service got the role, primary role, initially by itself, and then because of its cock-ups, basically had to do it jointly with the Metropolitan Police Special Branch. So, frankly, that's how it was looking. So in Northern Ireland, the RUC Special Branch did a hell of a lot of the work with the Army and the Security Service, and to some extent MPSB, Metropolitan Police Special Branch. So that's how the Army, Air Force and Navy have their own bodies that look at areas within their confines that you could say are intelligence orientated, and to join those bodies you'd basically have to join one of the services and then say, I'd like to be in ICOR, military intelligence, or I'd like to be in the naval intelligence, or whatever it might be. So you'd have to then say, that's what I'd like to be in, and then you sit your particular things that need to be sat in order to do that in those particular bodies. But I'm talking about the civilian bodies, which do the vast majority of work, and to be fair, the military bodies should be passing their information to whomever it's in the purview of. So if it's external, they should also be passing that to the Secret Intelligence Service. If it's internal, they should be passing that to the Security Service. And obviously if it hits on anything that's, let's say there is a spy example doing something and they need arresting, obviously that then goes to what is now the Counter-Terrorism Command, which would have been the Met Special Branch, or the Anti-Terrorist Branch, as it was in the old days, who would have been doing the arresting on behalf of the Met Special Branch. So, or the Met Special Branch, if it's a spy, would have been doing the arresting and bringing them in front of a court, etc., etc. So that's how it kind of works. So for those wishing to perform this role, the first thing you need to do is to make a decision as to what you think you want to do, what organisation you think you want to join in order to do it. Then have an understanding of how that organisation works. And each organisation would go into more depth with you when you make your application. So how does it work? What does it do? Is it internal of the country? Is it external of the country? Etc., etc. Then I guess you need to look at what role you might be able to attain within that particular service. So you need to know that ahead of time. And then you have to run with it as to what you would like to do. But again, the misnomer is that in the United Kingdom, people seem to misunderstand this, the primary body for dealing with terrorism out with now, this is to modern day, this is right now as we sit here, out with solely intelligence. So if it's solely intelligence, then you could argue the primary body is the Security Service, MI5. However, it cannot function without things like the Met's Counter-Terrorism Command. Okay, so the primary body, and they have now centralised bodies. I don't want to go too deep into everything, but they have centralised bodies. So they have the Northwest Terrorist Centre example, which will have security service people in it and police in it, etc. And that, so they work like that, or the Northeast and blah, blah, blah. So they work that way. But the primary bodies, the intelligence movement, solely intelligence would be the security service. But there's moments it's coming from solely intelligence, it's the police in every other aspect in terms of combating it. Now, some people will stand and say, well, what about the SAS or SBS? Right. They're not an intelligence body. What they do is, if, and this is a big if the police request their assistance, And it's an if. There is no given, we will be doing this. No. If the police request the assistance of the military to carry out generally a counter-terrorism defensive action, which is aggressive and attacking action, they may then request the assistance of the military special forces, SAS, Special Air Service, SBS, Special Boat Service, if it's something off the coast, SAS and coast, as a general rule. And I know they work together, but as a general rule, it can be that. So it's not a given that just because there's a terrorist in stuck in a house and saying they're going to blow it up, that the SAS will deal with it. No, the police have to say, we wish your attention. We'd wish for you to aid us. And it's not just a straightforward matter either. You need to understand that, because there's a whole host of things you have to write off. The police have to say, aid to the civil power, because of course the military have no powers on the land inside it. In America, it's even stronger. It's called comitatus in America, which the military are not allowed to work internally in the United States. Not allowed to. They do, but they're not allowed to. So here in the United Kingdom, you can do that, but you have to sign off papers, Home Secretary sign off papers, to allow for military assistance to be provided to police. And then that assistance can be given to carry out the job, as you saw on the Iranian embassy siege example. Everybody knows of that one. So with that, it is not the job of those military forces to carry out action. Now, that can also happen in terms of surveillance. If you have a really big job, 7/7 is a good example, you can then ask the military surveillance capacity to assist police. And that, again, can be written up. The security service will probably already be working with police on it, but you need then the military assistance. And, of course, as a general rule, then probably not carry it. Whereas the police can carry, because that's part of their role. They can, when I say carry, that's carrying firearms, weapons. That's part of their role in country. So, any officer who has the authority to deploy with a firearm can deploy with a firearm. Don't care who he is or she is. But the military don't have that, unless that's been authorised by the state and been authorised then by the police. So you see, people have this misunderstanding that somehow the police are not doing these things. No, the basic role of dealing with terrorism, as soon as terrorism happens, the body dealing with that 99 times out of 100 is the police, wherever that might take place. That's who deals with these issues. So in making your decision about which organisation you want to work for and how you wish to carry out that work, you've got to look at what you think the bit of work is that you think you wish to do. Do you kind of understand that? I hope you do. So do not look at these silly programmes like Spooks. It is nothing like the real thing. I saw it about 3 times, and each time I saw it, I saw security service officers doing what special branch officers would be doing, not what security service officers would be doing. Because 9 times out of 10, they're behind a computer dealing with writing reports or analysing, etc., etc., etc. So that was their role. The special branch is more outward role on the streets, doing the work, making sure things are front. And now SO15's got that role, out on the streets, doing the work, making things happen, getting inside of organisations, etc., etc., etc. So it depends on what you want to do. Now, I'm not calling any of these agencies down. I've got absolute knowledge of the police, countering terrorist agencies and countering espionage agencies, because that was primarily the special branch, subsequently SO15, whatever. SO1 now, if you want to carry out personal protection, that's another body which is now, all used to be part of special branch, but it's now called SO1, Specialist Protection. They protect our ministers, and Royalty Protection, SO14, carry out the Royalty Protection role. They're now under a body called RASP. So if it's protection you want to do, you do not want to join the security service, and you do not want to join the Secret Intelligence Service or any other service. If it's protection you want to do, you need to join the police. and the police in the Metropolitan Police to do it, because no other police is doing that. It's the police in the Metropolitan Police, and it's either SO1, Specialist Protection, or the royalty aspect of it. If that's what you want to do, protection work, that's where you need to go. All used to be part of Special Branch, so that's gone to that, different roles. If you want to do the gathering of intel, well, then you've got your choice, Security Service or Counter-Terrorism Command. Now, it may well be that you can't stay in the Counter-Terrorism Command all your career, and you'd have to do normal duty policing beforehand, so you may want to aim to go into the Security Service. I know the Security Service very, very well. I work with them a hell of a lot. I know them. If you want to do that sort of work external and be a spy, like James Bond, or obviously not with James Bond sort of stuff, carrying weapons running around, but be a spy like James Bond was, espionage is your role, or you want to counter terrorism in terms of that spying and recruiting individuals external to the United Kingdom, outside of the country, then your role is you want to join the Secret Intelligence Service, MI6. That's what you want to join. You've got all the world to play with, and I know that extremely well because for 4 or 5 years I was seconded to the organisation. I was a case officer, which is the individuals who design operations, who try and defeat organisations or want to defeat terrorist organisations, etc., etc. Right, so that's where you'd want to aim yourself, and that's what you'd want to go to. If you want to perform all of the roles, regardless of where it is in the world, in terms of signals intelligence, communication systems, finding out via communications, computers, etc., 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 what's going on in the world, trying to find out, trying to get eavesdrop on people, then you want to go to GCHQ. Now, both 6 and 5 have aspects of that, and indeed Special Branch used to have aspects of that. But if you want the real body that's doing it all, it's all in its ambit, then really GCHQ would be for you, and you've got a pointy head because you're smart and you want to work on those type of things. That's the body you want to look to, and you're a linguist or whatever. That's the body you probably want to aim yourself at, GCHQ. If you want to be a more rugged soldiery type, blah, 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 doing anything, not necessarily in secret work, and you're thinking of more taking on the enemy type thing in any war or anything like that, then as a special force, then obviously if you're thinking you're heading towards special forces, but you're not just doing intelligence work. You're basically, if you will, doing the kinetic work, the actual combat work. That's your SPS and SAS at the pinnacle. Obviously, you can drop all the way. You can drop down to that. They'll hate me for that. So, Paratroop Regiment, Marine Commandos, they're all doing this type of work. But I guess people there would turn around and say the pinnacle are the 2 special forces bodies at the top. Yeah, that's what they'd say. I can't combat that, and I wouldn't. I'd say they probably are the pinnacle, and that's where you'd want to go to do that type of work. But that is not countering terrorism, is the way you think about it that way. Because that could just depend upon the war zone that you're in, or whatever, what you need to be doing, or the mission that you've been sent out on to do that particular role. So that's that. I think I've covered practically everything for you who are looking at the secret. Yes, there is a body now called the National Crime Agency. Now, that body does not deal with terrorism, does not deal with espionage, does not deal with those type of issues. But if you want to do that, in-depth sort of work, international work, on criminal stuff, on drug stuff, example, then you could do worse than join the National Crime Agency, because that's what you're dealing with, major crime, etc., etc., etc. But that's not, major crime is not terrorism, major crime is not espionage, major crime is not subversion. Those are completely different issues. You need to understand that if you want to go into this world. So if crime is your thing, and you want to start off and keep in a particular role and do it internationally, then NCA would be your body to go to. But but you know, the questions that have come to me are all about fighting terror, fighting espionage, etc. Then that body's no good for you, because that's not what it does. But if it's crime, drugs, etc., that you want to deal with, then that's the body you would look at. Now, all of the police forces have their own capacity and capability in that as well, so you could just look at the police forces as well throughout the United Kingdom. So I hope that this has been of interest to you. Any more questions, please do write to me. If you're not subscribing already, please do subscribe. I know I give the advert for subscription every time, but please do subscribe. As I said, if you'd like to know anything else about this particular, drop me a line as per normal. And I hope that this has been of some interest to you. Obviously, there's much, much more depth I could go into. But I think I had to give you the historical perspective as well, because otherwise you wouldn't understand where we're coming from. I think I had to explain to you also how the United Kingdom does it, that at the national level, UK level, there is a joint police security service role. I think I had to explain that security service is not all singing, all dancing, all embracing. It's not their role. That it basically depends on police to do much of its work. Any questioning, any arrests, any detentions, you know, any of trying to get people in front of a court, you know, even if it's espionage, it's got to be the police. Terrorism, it's got to be the police. The security service cannot do any of that. So that's the reason why I rephrase that, that's the biggest one I get that people don't understand. The security service is not doing any of those things. It's not its remit. Indeed, it has no powers to do so. And the other one, people ask me about guns. The security service cannot carry them. It's not their remit. It's not their job. That's the police. Okay? So again, you do need to understand that. The other question that I had was, which is the best? Now, in the old days, I would have said, if you want to stay in your own country and do the role, I would have said that the Metropolitan Police Special Branch, or Scotland Yard Special Branch, offered you the best, because you did everything. You did protection, you did all types of intelligence gathering, subversion, you did agent recruitment, you did everything. So that, for me, was the best body. Now that's gone and is split up into various bodies, it clearly isn't. So, and the fact that the police are taking an absolute hammering, you know, if maybe you'd be better off in the security service. But the best, I would say, taking away that, would be the Secret Intelligence Service. I got a soft spot for it. And I would go with the Secret Intelligence Service, especially if you want to be international. But then you have to take into account that you'd be posted abroad, etc., etc. So if you want to stay in the United Kingdom, it's obviously not the best body for you. But if you do want to go around the world, in addition to being in the HQ in London, but you want to go around the world, then by far the Secret Intelligence Service would be the body to run with. And I wouldn't be fair if I didn't say that if you liked messing around with computers or with cutting edge technology, then clearly, if that's your bent, then you would wish to go into GCHQ. And I'll end on what I kind of started on. Things have massively improved for people of colour and for gender orientation. Women had always been in it, but didn't necessarily always have the primary roles. Now they do have. So people of colour and gender, do not be put off by that. You've got exactly the same opportunities, exactly the same chances. So for me, it's open to all of you. All organisations are open to you, regardless of colour, creed, gender, sexual orientation, etc., etc. So now these services are egalitarian, much more, even to the point where you're now getting people of, class isn't as much an orientation. I still think class is there, but it isn't as much an orientation in some of in those agencies anymore as it once used to be. I'll go as far as to say you can get in the working class, but of course, first and foremost, you've got to feel that you fit and feel, etc., etc. So I wouldn't put anybody off of any class either. Anything worth it isn't easy. Let's put it that way. So if you really want to be in any of these organisations, then it's up to you to push yourself forward and to be in those organisations, to strive and to show that you've got what it takes to do the job. Last thing I end on, none of this is easy. There's a price to be paid for all of what you do, and depending on what you do, you can pay a mental price for it, as well as a price in any other way. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that this week's Black Spy podcast has been something of interest to you. I know it's of interest to particular individuals that have contacted me. I hope everybody who's listened has got a feel for it anyway and an understanding, because why would you be listening to my geopolitical podcast if you didn't find this subject interesting? See you again next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
More than a quarter of a century, I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.